So far, you've learned how to use the basic count and length traces. The next of the basic trace types is the area trace, and this lesson builds on what we covered in the count and length trace lessons. If you haven't already watched those two, you might want to do that first so you have the foundation. After viewing this lesson, you'll know how to use area traces to measure components on your plans. You'll also see how to subtract portions of your area trace, and you'll learn to take off curved lines using arcs or circles. I'm looking at the second floor plan, and I'm going to zoom in so I can measure the square footage of the rooms for carpet. As with count and length traces, I can initiate an area trace either by clicking on the button on the Home tab or from double-clicking it in the traces list if it's there. Remember, your list of traces might look different than mine, but you can always get to an area measurement from the ribbon. Now let's keep the tooltip handy again. An area trace lets me click the corners of a space, such as a room, to find its area. Now notice that I'm clicking in a clockwise direction, which returns a positive quantity. The tooltip reminds me of this, and we'll talk more about the difference between clockwise and counterclockwise in a moment. As I click successive points, the quantity list shows not only the area quantity, but also the count and perimeter quantities. You can control which of the 4 clap values appear in this list, and I'll show you how to do that in the lesson on configuring traces. As I click, dimension shows a line connecting back to the original point, so the area is always delineated. If I were to stop the measurement here, I would get this triangular area. So now I'll quickly finish taking off this room. So now I want to finish this trace and start a new one. So instead of double-clicking it to finish, I'll press N to finish the measurement and start a new one. This time, I'm going to start at the upper right corner next to the bathroom. So watch what happens. As I round the corner to the right, my area is filled in with this obnoxious red pattern, not the expected green. That's because Dimension thinks I'm going in a counterclockwise direction, and that would result in a negative area quantity, subtracting it from my total, not a positive quantity that gets added to the total. The red pattern is there to remind me of this. Now, we know that I'm actually going clockwise, and once I click the next point, Dimension figures that out. I finished this room, and we will talk more about those negative areas, or cutouts, later in this lesson. Now, we all know that as soon as we start practicing a new skill, our first mistake comes just a few seconds later. So let's look at some options for correcting errors in your takeoff measurements. I want to talk about some of the buttons on the Home tab that are a little too far to the right to see, so I'll place them here. I'll start an area trace by double-clicking it. As soon as I start the trace, the Cancel button becomes available, indicating that I can discard this measurement at any point. I can also use the Escape key to cancel a measurement in progress. So I'll press Escape here. I'm going to start this measurement over. Here's something else to notice about these buttons. After I click my first point, the Add Points button is highlighted, and my cursor has changed to match that button to indicate that I'm adding points to the current measurement. You saw in the lesson using count traces that even after you've ended a trace, you can click this button to open it again and add additional points. Now, let's say I've made a mistake with my measurement. I can use the Undo button to fix it. But the backspace key is the equivalent of undo, and I like to use keyboard shortcuts. In the lesson on length traces, you saw that you could use either 2-point lines or 1-point lines to measure multiple parallel lines or lines originating from the same point, respectively. Another option, the 2-point rectangle, works well with area traces. The offices and staff rooms on the first floor are a good place to start. Once again, the tooltip explains how to use this tool. Notice that the shortcut key for 2-point rectangle is 4. Also, the cursor has changed to match the 2-point rectangle button. Using this technique, I just need to click the upper left and lower right corners of the area. I'm still in 2-point rectangle mode, so my next point will automatically start a new group. I'll measure a couple more rectangular rooms. Now, the workroom isn't a rectangle, so I'll press 4 to turn off 2-point rectangle mode so I can take it off. This automatically starts a new group of points. And once I'm done with the workroom, I'll press 4 again to return to 2-point rectangle so I can pick up these last 2 rooms. And if you don't want to remember all these shortcut keys, you can always just click the 2-point rectangle button. So far, we've been measuring the area of components made of exactly horizontal and vertical lines, but not all plan components are that regular. Let's look at the site plan, which shows multiple curbed and landscaped areas with irregular shapes. Now I need to take off the concrete curb. This portion of the curb is curved. In order to measure that arc, I just need 3 points, one at the start of the arc, one in the middle, and one at the end. Then I'll press C to create the arc. Dimension fills in several more points to make a smooth arc between my points 1 and 3. You can control the number of points that Dimension adds, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Also, you can use this trick with length and perimeter measurements as well. Arcs are not limited to area traces. Now we've reached the next arc, so let's do the steps again. This is point 1, point 2, point 3, and then press C. When I get to the next arc, it's 1, 2, 3, and C. And now for the final arc. Now that you know how to take off arcs, taking off circles is a cinch. Start the trace, and then simply click points 0 degrees, 90, and 180 degrees. Press C, then click 270 and 360 degrees, and press C again. You're done. There are user preferences settings for arcs and circles, and we'll go over those in a couple of minutes. So now that you understand area measurements, you might be wondering what to do when you need to subtract portions of an area from your total. Dimension calls these cutouts, and the site plan gives some good examples. I need to measure the area of this curb without including the area enclosed by the inner portion. I'll start a new area measurement, and first I'll measure the outer edge of the curb. Now there are lots of arcs in this one too, so I'll use the 1, 2, 3, C method that you've just seen. Now I just need to cut out the area enclosed by the inner edge of the curb. I'll do that with a disconnected group of points. So I'll press G to start the new group, and then I'll take off the inner edge in a counterclockwise direction. As I complete the measurement, notice that the inner area is now clear with no green shading because I'm subtracting it from the area. I'm at the end of the measurement, so I'll press C to generate the last curve, and then I'll press S to finish the measurement. Let's look at the settings in user preferences that are related to arcs and circles. I'll go to Settings, User Preferences, and click the Drawing tab. The setting Degrees between arc points determines how many points dimension inserts when you measure an arc using the 1, 2, 3, C technique. Right now, my degrees between arc points setting is 10 degrees. When I specify the arc using 1, 2, 3, C, dimension places a point every 10 degrees apart for a total of 10 points spanning 90 degrees. If I change the degrees between arc points to 15 degrees, the points are 15 degrees apart for a total of 7 points spanning 90 degrees. The greater the arc between points, the fewer points and lower accuracy you'll have. This lesson showed you how to use the basic area trace, use cutouts to subtract sections of an area, and take off arcs and circles. Before you move on to the next lesson, take some time to complete the activity on area traces. Thanks for viewing this Anytime Learning video.